Good evening. I am Dr.S.Srithar, Associate Professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering Honors, KL University. Today, I am going to demonstrate you the topic on Lambda function with DynamoDB and API Gateway. So this is the experimental flow. That is, so consider I have one form data. I need to send the form data to the DynamoDB, that is the database. So I want to send the form data to the database. So you cannot directly send your data to the database. So what we need to do is you need to send the data to the server. Now server will forward the data to the database. So here the client will send the data to the server through the API gateway. So these are the steps we have to follow. First thing, I am going to create one DynamoDB table where this is the configuration. Like the student name is the table name is student, partition key is ID, data type string. Second thing, I need to create a IAM role. This is very important because for service to service communication, we need to create the IAM role. So here I am going to use the Amazon DynamoDB full access role. And the third step is I need to create one Lambda function where the runtime environment is 3.8 Python. And so this is the sample code I have to keep it. So this code I will explain during the demonstration. And finally, I need to map all the things with the API gateway. Now what API gateway will do is, so through the API gateway will send the data to the Lambda function. Now Lambda function will push the data to the DynamoDB. So I'm going to show everything in practical. So you can log into your AWS management console and take the first service. I'm going to do as per this flow diagram. So we will start from this DynamoDB. So first log into the service called DynamoDB. Take the service. Click on this table and create a new table called student. And the partition key is ID. Partition key ID is simply nothing but it is a primary key where you can keep the data type as string. Now click on create table and refresh this table. So now click this table and click on this explore table item and you can see that there is no items were written now. So now what I need to do is I am going to work with this IAM role. So because for service to service communication like Lambda to DynamoDB communication you need IAM role. So I am duplicating this tab and go to the service called IAM. So now go to this roles, create a new role. Here the trusted entity type is AWS service where the use case is Lambda function because Lambda function using DynamoDB. So use case should be Lambda function. Click on next. The policy is DynamoDB full access. Type DynamoDB whereas the first one is full access. Select only the first role and click next and keep the role name Dynamo full. So this is your option. You can give any name here. Now create the role. So okay, now we created IAM role. The next step is I need to create a Lambda function. Go to the service called Lambda. So now go to functions and create a new function. So function name is function 1. You can take the runtime as Python 3.8. Click on this change default execution role. You can use the existing role. Just now we created the DynamoDB full access role. So you can use that role. Type Dynamo full. This is the role we created and now create the function. So there is a defined code will generate. You can keep all the code as is. Let's see. You can see that there is a lambda underscore function.py. So this is a very simple Python code is given, which will return hello from lambda. So let it be. You just keep the thing as such. So as per this diagram, lambda completed, DynamoDB completed, communication between lambda and DynamoDB. That is IAM role we have done. Now I need to create the API gateway. Through API gateway, I need to send the data. Let's see. I am duplicating the tab and open another service called API gateway. So now click on this APIs. So here you have to select the REST API and click on this bell. Keep the API name as test. I'm going to use the name as test. Click on create API. So next I need to use the method called post method. So because I'm going to send the data through the post method. So click on create method. So here the method type is post. Method type is post and the integration type is lambda function. Come down and you can see that the lambda function is given. If you click, automatically the function ARN will come. Select the function and create the method. It will take a minute to create the function. Now you can see this. This is the entire workflow, that is method request, integration request, which will go to the lambda function, then integration response, then method response. So this is what the client and server communication. Now I'll show you how to test your input. So that is, so here just click this and you can find something called test. Click on it and here without giving your user input, let's try to click on test. The thing is that if I click text, what will happen? API gateway will call the lambda function. Now actually we haven't connected our lambda function with the database. So whatever the data available in your lambda function, which will display. Let's see. If I try to click test, which will automatically calls your lambda function. Now the lambda function contains the default content as hello from lambda. It will display. So now response is success. And now what we can do is, we have to do a small modification in the code. That is, I need to include this source code. I'll explain this code. First, to keep this source code in your lambda function. So here, the important thing is that first one is the Boto3 library we are installing. So this is for your communication, that is DynamoDB and the lambda communication. We are creating one object called DynamoDB, and here I am going to use the table as student, where this table student available in your DynamoDB. Now I am going to pass one lambda handler event, which is through API gateway. Whenever you are passing the data, then the data is to be recorded in your DynamoDB. So finally, I'll get the status code as 200 and the message is data creation success. So once you are done this, just to deploy this. So okay, successfully now deploy. Now you see this, now please go to the API gateway. So previously, without any user data, we just tested. Now let's see, I'm going to pass a data. Let's see, I'm going to pass this data. So that is, the thing is that ID is your primary key, because in your DynamoDB we kept the key, that is the primary key as ID. So now you can see that ID is 100, name Sridhar, age 33 and address Vijayawada. So now I'll try to test. I'll tell you what will happen. the thing is that as per this flow, so we haven't created the client. Instead of client, in the API gateway test pass itself, test dashboard itself, there is option to provide the data. So now it will call the API gateway. API gateway will call the Lambda function. Now Lambda function will push the event, that is data, to the DynamoDB. Let's see. So if I try to test, you can see that I am getting the status code as 200 and the status code 200 with messages data creation success. That's it. Now you go to your DynamoDB table, click on your table, click on this explore table items and refresh this item data. You can see that your data now available in your DynamoDB table. So this is how you can establish a client server communication. So let us summarize the things whatever learned in the today's lecture. That is, we created one API gateway and we connected with the Lambda function. Now data is sending from Lambda function to DynamoDB. Thank you.